Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright, speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Graventon. Folks, do forgive the sound quality. We've been having a little bit of technical difficulties here, but this is still good and will work, and so we're going to go ahead and jump into the program, and it's something that we need to discuss, something that's really of the utmost imperative here to discuss exactly what it is that's wrong with Donald J. Trump and the problem that he poses for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. And that problem is this: he has been consistently undisciplined. He has been one that just flies off at the hinges, just says whatever he wants without any consideration or thought into what it means or how that works. And it's deleterious. It's deleterious because it puts us in a very dangerous situation. And we have to actually come to our senses here and do something to deal with the problem that he presents. Because if the Republican Party fails to address this, then it's only going to get worse. And we've had it get worse since the time of 2008 and 2012. It's this erroneous notion of accepting the lesser of two evils as if that will somehow solve the problems that we're facing in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic. But the whole problem with that is, the premise of that is, it's set up on this notion of you're going to be able to fix the problems by the next election cycle. But it never improves. We've not once seen it improve. It's only gotten worse. And that just can't be a good pattern. It's insanity in that you keep repeating it over and over again in the hopes of achieving a different outcome. But how does that work? It doesn't work.
It only works if it's actually valid. It only works if it's actually valid. The only way it can be valid is if our Constitution is followed. We know that Donald Trump sees no value in the Constitution. He's never read it. And now we have Sean Hannity trying to spin these stupid reports with Rudolph, the red-nosed neo-Nazi Giuliani, about this whole Second Amendment issue, saying that, well, Hillary's obviously the worst candidate for the Second Amendment, and, you know, trying to backpedal all this crap and this nonsense that Trump was talking about, basically advocating open assassination, or insinuating that it would be the individuals like us who value the Second Amendment would go out and take care of Hillary, you know, through the Second Amendment, which is nonsense. But then on the other side, he says Trump is clearly the best candidate to represent the Second Amendment. I'm sorry, but how could that be possible if Trump sees no value in the Constitution, i.e., which is indicative of seeing value in the Second Amendment? Trump doesn't support the Second Amendment. He was actually in support of 2013 Dianne Feinstein's assault weapons ban. He supported that. But where is Rudolph the red-nosed Nazi Giuliani at on that? Oh, has he forgotten about it? Or maybe he's hoped that people have forgotten about his stance as mayor of New York supporting the assault weapons ban being applied in New York State. He didn't do anything to stop that. He tried to lend that as being part of the credibility of why the crime rate supposedly went down in New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And that's the problem. We have seen this play out time and again in such a way that they are trying to convince us that they are standing up for the values that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. But the fact of the matter is, it's not working. And it won't work because it is diametrically opposed to what our founding fathers said was the way that this nation should be. And we have to be proactive in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, because these are the guys that are trying to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And that doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is when you consider what is our rights, it rests with us. We are the ones that are given the onus, responsibility, and duty, as well as obligation to proactively maintain and safeguard those rights. But how are we going to do that when the people within our party are disregarding it? It makes no sense. None whatsoever.
Well, it's not only that they're disregarding it, they're taking it completely out of context, and they're wanting to put their own interpretation on it.
Right.
You can't do that. The interpretation of the Constitution is strictly forbidden.
Right.
You can't say, well, the Second Amendment means this because of this, this, and this. No. The Second Amendment was clearly defined in the Federalist Papers. James Madison specifically defined what arms was, or armaments, who specifically the rights belonged to, or that right was attached to specifically, was the people.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with the militias, state-sanctioned militias, the federal military. None of that. It is strictly a right attached to the people. And what people do not understand, especially the Trumpledites and the Rudy Giulianis of the world in this country, and all these elitist, sycophantic douchebags, for lack of a better term, they want to seem to think that there is not just people that have rights. They want to think that the states have rights. They want to think that the federal government has rights. They want to have all these extracurricular individuals or entities put into the Constitution where it's strictly prohibited and forbidden.
Well, it's because they want to reshape and define the way that the system works. They want to put their own mark on it. You know, it's what they always do. They act as though they have an idea as to what's the best thing, and that they need to just act, when in fact the best thing they could do is not act, and that is to allow the system to do what it needs to do and protect us from the encroachment of unreasonable governmental tyranny and oppression. But they don't want to do that because they need to feel like they're doing something. They need to feel useful. Well, maybe they feel useful going straight to hell.
Yeah, that's, again, it points to the capabilities of people who understand the Constitution, what the intended purposes of it are, where the ultimate authority resides with. They don't buy into this drivel. They're speaking as loud as they can at the top of their voices, but yet they're being heard, but nobody is listening to them. It's almost, in a way, Randy, it's kind of to the point of we come to a point where we feel like we're beating our heads against the wall because it doesn't seem to be getting through to people. But I believe it is. And I believe it will get through to more and more people the closer we come to November for the election cycle, and even immediately afterwards. Because let's face it, Donald Trump cannot beat Hillary Clinton. Period. Mm-hmm. I don't care what anybody says, it cannot happen. He does not have the wherewithal to do it. And if it does happen, people say, "Oh, you were wrong." No, I'm actually even more right then if that happens than I am now, for the simple fact that Donald Trump will be more destructive to the United States and our way of government than Hillary ever thought of being. Why? Because we know how she operates. We know the inner workings of her mind because we know what her philosophies and ideologies are based on and rooted in. That is Satanism. Since we know what that problem is, every problem that is a secondary problem. So instead of combating the secondary problems, which we still have to do, We just don't have to focus all of our attention on it. That's what the Fabians expect people to do. They create all these problems. See, they are the underlying problem. They are the root problem. They are the cancer. Okay?
And every other problem that they
yes, and every other problem that they create, their whole ideology and their whole method is to get everybody focused on all those secondary problems. Okay, all the symptoms of the problem instead of the problem itself. Okay? This is how you solve this. And I'm going to use some personal life experience here related to my career. I've had issues over the past few weeks where there have been secondary problems created for me. Well, instead of just focusing on those secondary problems and just handling them, I'll handle them, but I'm going to go right to the root problem and solve that problem first. Why? Because if you don't, there will always be secondary problems that come out of that. This is what the Fabians don't expect us to do. They expect us to focus and fixate on the secondary problems and ignore the root problem.
And one of the things that we've said here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, time and again, is that Trump would be a disaster in so much as he would alienate the base of the Republican Party. And we see that happening. He is dropping in the polls. In fact, one of the things that Texas Senator Ted Cruz said before he suspended his campaign was, if Trump is selected as the nominee for the gutless opposition party, then he's going to lose by double digits. And the polls are showing that. Now, I know that we have had a tendency to say that polls don't deserve that much credence, that they've been woefully inaccurate in election cycle after successive election cycle. But the fact of the matter is that Trump is not performing well. In fact, Rinse and Repeat Us has come out and said that if Trump does not start improving in the polls, they're going to focus their funding down ticket. Now, the major problem here for the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Bulgarian is that he has come out and said that he doesn't have any campaign finances. He doesn't have any money. So how is that going to work?
Well, wait a second. He was self-funding. He said he didn't need anybody's money. He was funding this himself.
Does that mean that Donald was lying?
That Trump exposed.
Right.
Yes. So is he lying then when he said it, or is he lying now? Or is he lying the whole time?
Yeah. And I think he's always been lying. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
He is a pathological liar. He can't seem to help himself. And that's the thing. When I started this evening's program, we mentioned a lack of discipline. Clearly, Trump has a lack of discipline. He can't control what he's saying. He can't control what it is he does. And therefore, he is not qualified to be the President of the United States of America. And that's what we have been warning about now for damn near a year.
Well, he's not qualified with the discipline. And again, this is something that a lot of people have taken out of context, and it's been, demasculated over the years. The term discipline, we see within the household. There's laws you can't spank your children because it's child abuse. Well, they basically taken away the aspect of discipline. But here's the other aspect of discipline. It could be said, and it's legitimate to say this, that if an individual has an education, a background in a specific area, a specified field, that would be considered to be their discipline because they put the time and effort into understanding it. See, Trump doesn't have the discipline when it comes to the Constitution, specifically with the oath of office that the president takes in Article 2, Section 1, or Section 2 of the Constitution. I believe it's Section 1, Clause 8.
Yeah, I believe so.
Section 1, Clause 8. To uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution.
Right.
To the best of his ability. How could somebody think, in order to have a discipline, when you exercise discipline in a certain field, that is being exhibitive of having an ability. He doesn't have any discipline on the Constitution, therefore he lacks the ability, and since he lacks the ability, how is he going to have any impetus or even any wherewithal or fortitude or even ambition to uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution?
He's not going to be into
that. He doesn't want to because he sees no value in it. He never has seen any value in it. And that's the problem. So therefore, by his own actions and his own words and statements and views that he holds pertaining to certain issues that are constitutional issues, he's waffled. He's a waffler.
Mm-hmm.
That shows he doesn't have any discipline. He has no ability. So therefore, he has no ability to the best of his ability. I'm sorry, but you have to have some form of ability to begin with. He has none.
Yeah.
He cannot legitimately take that oath because it would be a lie. And even other countries would look at that. Even other countries know what that oath is. And people, they're laughing at us now. Wait until if he gets elected and he takes that oath, we're going to be the cosmic joke of the universe of all time.
Of course we are. And it's because what he stands for and represents is not our values. You know, America, as the late Margaret Thatcher had said, is a nation that was founded upon philosophy. Europe, that's founded on history. But the United States of America was founded on those fundamental, self-evident truths that Thomas Jefferson so beautifully put down in those poetic words of his in the Declaration of Independence that is timeless. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain fundamental and inalienable rights, which chief among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Trump doesn't support any of that. That's the problem. Remember, he was all about abusing eminent domain like what we saw with the Kellogg case. He is about trampling upon people's rights. He even used his sister, who is a district federal judge up there in New York, to get favorable rulings on those things. So that's basically forum shopping to get what he wants. And what he wants is a direct violation of the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the other popular sovereigns. And as we've mentioned on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, whenever you encroach upon or abridge the rights of your fellow popular sovereign, that is when you violate the law. That's why we have a criminal justice system. That's why we have the judiciary to solve disputes that arise with respect to that. And we have to be emphatic about protecting those rights, because if we break away from that, if we back down from that, then we have turned our backs on the very foundational image that our founding fathers had conjured up for this nation some 235 years ago.
Sure. And again, part of that is, you speak of the criminal justice system and the laws. We have two federal laws that are on the books, still valid, has never been repealed, never been altered away from the core root of that law. And I'm speaking of Title 18 U.S. Code Sections 241 and 242. 241 is conspiracy against rights. 242 is deprivation of rights. And in both of them, it specifically mentions if two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his having so exercised the same, meaning because the person has exercised their rights and privileges, and then they were injured or oppressed, threatened, or intimidated for doing so, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. And if death results, they can serve any number of years in prison or life, or maybe sentenced to death. Folks, this is gone by the wayside. All these people, I know my rights, I know my rights. And then when Donald Trump says he can walk out in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and not lose any voters, he is advocating for the deprivation of somebody's rights. And because he's standing there and saying this in front of a whole bunch of people, and they're all collaborating with him on this and cheering him and applauding him, that makes it conspiracy. Because they're advocating it.
And we already see that what we are getting with these people is they're trying to carve out a special niche for a certain portion of the population and society, namely the elite.
They're populists.
Yeah, they're populists. And what it's going to do is the laws don't apply to them, but it applies to everybody else. And that really is one of the central tenets of Fabianism. Fabianism, as we have so oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is designed to get rid of the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. It's why they are doing everything within their power to completely and utterly annihilate the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. And it shows no signs of improving at any time in the foreseeable future. That is why we find that the United States of America today, as we sit here and have this conversation, it has both of its two mainstay political parties putting forth a Spadian socialist candidate. There's a reason why Evan McMullen has been propped up by an independent movement to try and challenge Donald Trump. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, because the last day for getting him on the ballot is tomorrow. And so I don't know how they're going to get that in time, but what it emphatically shows to all of us is that Donald Trump is a very unpopular candidate, as is Hillary Rodham Clinton. We are faced with two choices of which there is no such thing as a lesser of two evils. And of course, that's an erroneous doctrine anyway, because evil is evil is evil. It doesn't matter how you cut it. Evil is always evil.
I saw this great meme on Facebook. It says, basically in a nutshell, if voting for Donald Trump seems to make you believe that he is lesser evil than Hillary Clinton, well, not voting for Donald Trump or voting for Donald Trump doesn't mean that he's lesser evil than Hillary Clinton, because evil is evil. It's just like you just said. And it's like you said before. Do you want to have someone put a pistol to your right temple and pull the trigger, or to your left temple and pull the trigger? It's the same thing. Now, I want to give another example of the lack of discipline and the complete detachment and divorcing that Donald Trump has of himself and his followers from the Constitution and our legal system as a whole. Remember when Trump was talking about banning the Muslims from coming into the country from terrorist hotbeds and this and that, and he even flubbed that. He just wants to ban Muslims from coming into the country. And we even said what he should have said there, to be a little, more credible, was you ban the Muslims that are coming into the country. You don't allow them access into our country if they're coming from hotbed countries of terrorism like Iran, Pakistan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, all those places. But see, he screwed that up, because he went on to say that, and expounded on it, that if we need to have Muslims here put on a registry. Muslim Americans here put on a registry. Now, here's the thing. Okay, I'm not politically correct, never have claimed to be. In fact, I've openly declared war on political correctness, as has Randy and, our whole entire show. Okay? But here's the thing. We're not savages and barbarians. Okay? If individuals are here in the United States and they are sovereign citizens of the United States, regardless if they are Muslim or not, you cannot put them on a registry. You can't do it. That would be the identical thing of doing what Adolf Hitler did with the Jews, the Gypsies, and everybody else who he did not deem as being part of the master race.
And how is it any different than what those Middle Eastern countries are doing too? How is it any different than what those Middle Eastern countries are doing as well?
Sure. And FDR did this. Remember the internment camps? Japanese Americans and their families were rounded up. Inside the United States, they were rounded up and put in internment camps.
Korematsu v. United States. That was the big thing. And, of course, when you had second generation, what was known as the Nisei, being forced out of their homes, forced to forfeit their property, just treated like animals, that's a problem. That really is a black mark on our relatively brief yet illustrious history, and we can't stand for it.
No, we cannot allow that to happen. See, and that even goes back to, it's kind of like a rehash of slavery, Randy. It really is. Because when you take people, just because of their cultural background or because of their religious beliefs, whatever the case is, see, this is what people don't understand. Now, do I favor Muslims? No. Especially the ones that don't have any inclination to perpetuate our liberties and freedoms. They want to do everything to destroy us and annihilate us. You know, people like ISIS and the Taliban, which are all the same people, you know, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, all of them. No, as far as I'm concerned, they are enemies of the United States, and they have been declared enemies of the United States by Congress, who has the only authority under the Constitution to declare them as enemies of the United States. Am I going to defend them? No. But here's the thing. If they are American citizens, if they were born here or naturalized here, and they hold the title of United States citizen, they still have rights under the Constitution. If we were to deprive them of rights, due process, fair trial, so on and so forth, but yet not deprive everybody else that has those terroristic abilities and inclinations, then that would make us frauds.
Yes, it would.
You can't apply the Constitution to one group of people and then forego it for another group of people.
And that's the problem. You can't have a legal system that is selectively enforced. That's the thing. That's what equal protection under the law is. That's why there is the equal protection clause included in the United States Constitution. And yes, Trump is ignoring that. That is a major problem. It is a major problem that has only gotten worse as time goes on, and it is going to spell disaster. It is the perfect recipe for a disaster in this general election cycle that's slated for later this November. We cannot allow our nation to go down this path, because if it goes down this path, I find that it's going to be very difficult to recover from it. I really do.
Well, let's face reality with this, Randy. With the two candidates that we have, we're going down that path. At this point, we don't have a choice but to go down that path because, A, you have the individuals with Trump that don't want to see the forest for the trees and are willing to cut their own noses off to spite their face, and even go to greater extent than that. People said that they would actually take a bullet for Donald Trump because they've sworn a loyalty to him. Guess what? When you swear allegiance to an individual of this country, and you are willing to forego the Constitution, guess what? That, in a way, can be construed as sedition. It's illegal.
Right.
But you're pledging your loyalty to this individual because he wants you to, because you believe what he says. I mean, you're bat guano crazy. You absolutely are. It's nuts. But see, we're going down that path, Randy. We're going down that path, and we're going to have to endure this path. But it's not going. It can't be said that it's going to be all for naught because, again, Hillary Clinton, from what we've looked at with Donald Trump, with his lack of discipline, his inability, his lack of understanding, was actually completely vacant. I mean, his understanding of the Constitution is equivalent to the ovulation cycle of a gnat. Mm-hmm. He cannot beat Hillary Clinton. He cannot beat. The only way he would be able to beat her would be to, I don't know, maybe have a rigged election system. Isn't that what he railed against too? Didn't he say the whole system is rigged? I mean, this guy is nothing but a walking colostomy bag of contradiction. That's all he is. But we can weather through this because we have in the past, and it is in our burning desires and souls as Americans to endure these things. This is part of the duty and responsibility of having and establishing a more perfect union.
Right. It's our duty and our obligation, and above all, our responsibility to do so. Because if we don't, then the nation is going to fall and continue into this death spiral that it's been in, not only unabated, we're going to see that accelerate exponentially. And we can ill afford it. We can ill afford it because we're in the midst of an identity crisis coupled with a slew of constitutional crises. And unless and until we start getting serious about what is facing this nation and these problems that are all rooted in divorcing ourselves from the strict application of the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution, it ain't going to work. It just ain't going to work.
Right. But I know we can endure this because we are seeing more and more exactly what Donald Trump is about. We're coming to the point where we are beginning to understand him. Okay? Mm-hmm. We already understand Hillary Clinton to a T. We know what she's all about. We know where her ideologies lie, where they're rooted in and based on. We know how to combat that. Again, it's going back to the root problem. She is a Fabian. She belongs to the Fabian society, and the Fabianism as their whole agenda and modus operandi is the complete and utter destruction of our sovereign nation. Well, now that we know what their ambitions are, we know how to combat that. Hillary Clinton is nowhere near the devastating problem that people want to say she is. Why? Because we are perfectly well equipped to handle the likes of her. We know how to handle it. It's very simple. When she wants to have this executive order nonsense that she's going to probably do, much more than Obama is, excuse me, It's very simple. We just tell them, no, you don't have the authority to do it. We're not going to do it. And anybody tries to enforce this, guess what? You're putting people's lives in danger by trying to have this stuff. It's going to come to a point where people are going to be completely fed up. The problem with Trump is people have bought so much into his rhetoric and his snake oil salesman taglines that if he gets elected, people think we're complacent now or have been complacent over the last two election cycles. Complacency is going to be nothing but a giant blanket that's wrapped around everybody and folded in on itself. And it's going to be like a little chihuahua wrapping it up in a huge giant quilt and then watching the chihuahua try and, fight and crawl and scratch its way out of it. It's funny to watch, but guess what? It's only funny to the people that are on the outside of that blanket. We, the people, are going to be those chihuahuas wrapped up in that blanket because Donald Trump is going to completely and totally cover us with complacency. See, Trump got elected. He's going to fix this. He's going to fix that. It's going to be the same mindset that these people, Obama got elected, he's going to pay my mortgage. I'm going to get a free car. I'm going to get my Obama phone. It's the same nonsensical crap. Again, insanity. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
And at that point, when it comes to that, who do we really have to blame for that? We can't blame Trump for it entirely.
No.
We can't blame Hillary Clinton for it. We can't blame any of the other candidates that ran and are no longer in the race. We can't even blame the government for it. We have to blame we the people, because we became so stupefied and ignorant. We allowed ourselves to become that complacent. Enough is enough. We have to stop being complacent. That is not what our country was not founded on complacency. It was founded on vigilance, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, property, life, all of the fundamental tenets of the natural law system. They fought for that. People died for that. They did things in secrecy for the betterment of other individuals, not for themselves, because they knew that our republic and the sovereignty that we have was greater than the sum of our parts.
Right. It goes down to that whole notion that the nation, particularly the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our country and our representative Republican form of government, are necessarily greater than we are. That was the amazing thing. That's why Maggie Thatcher said that the United States of America was formed upon and built upon philosophy. That is the philosophy. The philosophy is that we have to be a free nation that is based on the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Again, that is why the opening lines to the preamble to our shared United States Constitution starts off with, we the people.
Yeah, I really don't understand why it's so hard for people to understand that. It's baffling. I mean, fifth graders understand this, Randy.
Yep.
Fifth graders understand it. Go out to March, somebody find me a fifth grader.
Right.
I would put more faith and trust in this election cycle in the hands of fifth graders than I would the mass voting population that we have. Why? Because the mass voting population that we have are nothing but a bunch of sycophants, the frauds, and they've gotten to the point to where if you don't believe or toe their line, if you don't do what they want you to do, well, then you're a traitor. You're a traitor to the American way. You're a traitor to the Constitution. But yet these individuals still do not even understand the simplicity of the Constitution when it comes to the notion of we the people. They want to put all of their hopes and dreams, all of their eggs in one basket. A giant blonde,
disorganized skit. Yeah.
Yeah. Because why? Because he says things that they like to hear. You know what? Go to any bar and find the local town drunk at any bar and tell him what he wants to hear, and he will do anything and everything for you. It's like these people are nothing but a bunch of drunkards. They like what they hear. It goes good with how they're feeling at the time. And then at the end of the day, when they wake up the next morning, i.e., after this election cycle and it didn't work out the way that they thought it was going to work out, they're going to have a huge hangover. They're going to feel so crappy about themselves. And then they're going to look for sympathy and empathy. And they're going to look for people to come and rescue them. They're going, oh, I was wrong. They're going to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, with their tails between their legs. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them are going to say, oh, no, I'm too proud to do this, and I'm going to stay sick behind my guns. Good. But Where was that when, sticking by your guns and standing up for your principles and beliefs, where was that when the constitutional candidate, the only constitutional candidate, was in the race?
Well, they decided to turn their back on him. They decided to buy into the propaganda that was thrust out there by the Lion Branch Trumpidians. And, of course, what happens with all of that is it becomes the narrative that's repeated. So if you put this falsehood out and keep rolling it out, rolling it along the ground, it's going to pick up more excrement and become a giant excrement ball. And that's what Trump is. Trump is this giant excrement ball of disunity, disloyalty, and dishonesty, and the Lion Branch Trumpidians just don't give a damn about reality. They don't give a damn about the truth. That's why I say they suffer from acute ostrich syndrome. They stick their hands up their posterior, not into the sand.
Yeah. Well, what that saying goes, you want to follow what your head says, just bend over and insert it up your own rectum, because that's what it is. Yeah. You feel, I'm following, what my head tells me to follow. I'm following my heart, and my head tells me to follow. Well, stick your head up your ass and go at it, because that's all you're good for, and that's all it does. But see, they want to attack people like you and I, because we've stood on our principles. We are going to vote our conscience because our conscience is dictated by our principles. But yet these individuals that supported Ted Cruz during the primaries, now that he's not in the running, he's not in the running anymore, so we have to vote for Trump. Really? Says who? Says who? Where is it dictated? Where is it written in stone that you have to vote for the Republican nominee?
Article 9, Section Existent, Clause 0.
Yeah, that's just the way it's always been. Since when?
You're not going to find the two-party system in the clear and concise language of the Constitution, because it ain't there.
It's not there. It has never been there, and it never will be there.
Right.
Ever. And because, you're not going to get the 34 states that you need to ratify the Constitution as an amendment to make a two-party legal system or election system. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because, it would be unconstitutional for that to happen. Because it would be abridging the rights of people to vote. And by voting, it is voting their conscience. Now, if people want to vote for Trump because their conscience tells them to, fine. Vote for Trump. If that's what your conscience dictates, vote for Trump. But don't sit here and tell me that when you supported Ted Cruz, I'm a man of principles. I have principles. And then now that he's out, you've turned your back on the Constitution and you've turned your back on your principles, and you want to tell me I'm a traitor. You know what? Not only can you go to hell, but you can go to hell by way of making love to the front end of a speeding semi-truck.
Yeah. What did the semi-truck ever do to you, Jeremy? Damn.
I don't know, man. It's just something it's bigly and shinily, and I don't know. Trust me, it's there. I don't like it, but you know what I'm saying. Did you see on Wednesday there was some lunatic that was trying to crawl up the sides of Trump Tower, and he was doing this to get an audience with the mafioso Quafioso himself. He said that in his little manifesto video that he put out on YouTube, and if this were any other regular situation of our audio recording, I would pull up that sound clip, but I can't now, so I'm going to paraphrase kind of what he said. He said, I need to have a meeting with you. It would be good, and I urge people to vote for Trump. This is the only way that I can get his attention. That right there is a dangerous cult of personality. He is willing to risk his own life and limb and those of his fellow popular sovereigns, because if he fell off that building and landed on somebody, that's going to cause damage. That just tells me that what we have here is someone who's so detached from reality, someone who just doesn't give a damn about anything other than himself. It's this me mentality.
And that's destructive. I hate to see that is becoming a part of our system of polity.
That individual, I hope to God, for the sake of his family, is not some kind of offspring of John Hinckley. Because see that right there.
Guess where he lives?
Exactly
Guess where he lives?
What's
He's
that?
a resident of Trump Tower.
So this is so Hinckley-esque. I'm going to go and shoot the president because I'm in love with Jodie Foster and so I can get her to notice me. I'm going to go climb Trump Tower, and because I'm so in love with Donald Trump, I'll do anything for him. This is the only way I can get him to notice me. Really? Again, folks, the complete and accurate description and definition of the clinical term insanity applies to this. These people, numerous times, they've said, "Oh, I'll go out and I'll step in front of a bullet for Donald Trump. That's fine. Even if he shot me, I'd still vote for him." They even said that. After he made the remark, he can go out in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot somebody in the face, and not lose any voters. People would say, "Oh, I'd let Donald Trump shoot me. I'd still vote for him if he shot me in the face." Welcome to Jonestown, folks.
Yep. And that's why I made that statement. That's why I made that statement after people were saying that Cruz had committed political suicide. I said, if Ted Cruz committed political suicide on that second night of the RNC that was held in Cleveland, Ohio, then the GOP is Jonestown and Trump is Jim Jones.
Yes. Yes. And with incidents like this, whatever he is, whatever mentality
he looked like one of those emo kids, Jeremy. He really did. He's 20 years old.
Maybe there's a Trump Pokemon he was trying to get on that Pokemon Go thing. Who knows?
Hair?
God. Hair? God.
That's the name of the Pokemonster there. Hair.
Hair. Oh gosh, I just had a flashback from Looney Tunes, that giant hair monster that chases bugs around. Oh man. Wrong shade of hair, I know, but
right.
Still. Hey, yeah. If Trump really cared about individuals and he actually cared about this guy and wanted to oblige this guy with his knee, all Trump would have had to do is just whip out his, Trump Punzel locks and let the guy climb up them. I mean, really, Do
you remember that character in Looney Tunes, that big hair monster, the red one?
Yeah.
That's Trump.
Yep. Yeah, it is. A wig with shoes. I mean, it's just you can't make this stuff up. You really
can't.
But it goes right along with everything that we've been saying for the better part of a year. Just how destructive he is. I mean, look at how he's radicalized these individuals. People want to talk about radical this and radical that, radical Islam, radical conservatives, radical, whatever. Trump has radicalized a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, we have individuals. I watched a clip of Trump. It's called Trump Exposes Trump, and it's all these things to where Trump says this, then he says that. He was asked by Cruz regarding, and asked him, did you or did you not say that the government should pay for everybody's health care? And he says, I didn't say that. And then they cut right to the clip of Trump saying, well, everybody should have health care. Well, how are you going to afford that? We're going to have the government pay for it. Trust me, we're going to save billions on the back end. We're going to save a lot of money on the back end. So it comes down to all this, and at the end of that clip, they had this little panel, and this beady-eyed lady who it looks like a meth addict, just all completely rigged out, her eyes just bulging. Right. Every one of those people are liars and liars and liars, but I believe Donald Trump.
Yeah, how does that work? How can everyone else be wrong, but Trump is always right? You see, at some point, there has to be a common denominator, and the common denominator is Trump.
Yeah. It's like this lady needs to go back into her basement, into her meth lab, and scrape the bottom of the pan and take another hit.
I gotta say, I don't think the Lion Branch Trumpidians are as creative as the meth lab people. You still have to have the ability to cook stuff.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that. But it's the point of he has radicalized a certain portion of our population.
Yeah, he has.
What he's done with the lying Trumpidians is no different than what Muammar Gaddafi did, no different than what Saddam Hussein did, or his two bastard sons who are now, rotting in hell.
Mm-hmm.
No different than what Stalin did. It's no different than what Karl Marx did with the proletariats and the bourgeoisie.
Yeah,
it's so different than what Hitler did with the German people. Yeah, it's no different than what Hitler did with the German people.
Yeah,
we're going to make the motherland or the fatherland great again. We're going to bring it up out of the dumps that we were thrust into because of World War I.
The system's rigged. The system's rigged. That was the other line that they always threw out there.
I can save you. I can do this. I can do that. It's all the same characteristics, all the same ideologies, the same posture, the same tone, and the same stances and mannerisms. With Trump, he's convinced people that our economy's in shambles and he can fix the economy. He's convinced people that he can solve our illegal alien problem by getting Mexico to pay for building a wall. How is that going to work? How?
It's not going to work.
How are you going to tell somebody you're going to pay for this? That's them fighting words.
Yeah.
If I was the president of Mexico and I had some quap commando like Donaldo Cesar Trumpolini telling me we're going to build a wall, we're going to have you pay for it. You know how I would tell them? You go ahead and build your wall, and then I'm going to smash through it and take over your country.
Well,
that's how that those fighting
military wouldn't quite be able to do that, but
no, but that's the
crux of it.
Yes, that's the nature. That's the feelings of resentment that Mexico now has.
Yeah.
See, Trump is all about alienating people and bringing certain people into the fold. Just like Jim Jones. He alienated people from their families.
Well, it's a cult-like mentality.
Society.
It's that cult leader.
It's the collective populist mentality.
Yeah.
That's what he is. He is the crop of personality.
Right.
That's what he is.
Yeah, and it's destructive. There's nothing about that isn't destructive, and that's the whole thing. Remember, they like to characterize the Trump campaign as the wrecking ball. It's all about destruction, but what we need is not destruction. We need to restore the Constitution. When you are on a restoration project, if you're trying to restore a historically significant building, it's the first thing you do, destroy that platform, destroy what's there, or do you try and preserve it as best you can?
Well, that's the thing. If you destroy what's there, you have nothing to restore from.
Right.
You have nothing to rebuild.
Right.
That's what they don't understand.
Yeah.
So, I'll make it even simpler. Let's take the Mona Lisa. Let's take the Mona Lisa. And let's say it needs to be, there's something happened.
Touched up.
It
Cleaned.
needs to be touched up. Cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can't clean, you can't touch it up, you can't do this. You just completely destroy the whole painting and then try to recreate it. You can't. It's impossible. That's why it's called a work of art.
Right.
Because there's only one like it in existence. It cannot be duplicated. It must be preserved at all costs. See, this is why we had the Inquisitions with the Knights Templar and the Illuminati, which a lot of people don't even understand what the Illuminati was all about. The Illuminati was set up by Michel Nostradamus, a.k.a. Nostradamus, and his father-in-law to preserve relics and antiquities from being destroyed during the Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
To be preserved.
Right.
So that future people can enjoy them.
But you see, these people don't care about that. These people are just about themselves and in the moment. You know, it's funny. They always try and say that the millennial generation is the me generation. And yes, they bought into the nonsense, the bovine excrement that's been thrust out there by Vermont Senator, "My face boy me Sandal is the flying saucer. I like my sauce as long as somebody else pays for it." They buy into that because they feel entitled. They feel as though they deserve an entitlement mentality. But that never works. It can't work because it is unsustainable.
The only entitlement that anybody, the only entitlement that anybody is ever entitled to are those that are done through the works and efforts of themselves.
Exactly.
Randy, you are entitled to your Juris Doctorate.
Yeah.
Why? Because you put the time, money, effort, and energy, blood, sweat, and tears into it to obtain it. It's yours.
Mm-hmm. It's my property.
This is something that it's your property. You are entitled to your property. Why? Because it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
People are not entitled to free education. There's no such thing as free education. Why? Because somebody has to foot the bill.
Right. There's no such thing as free.
Free anything.
Right.
Somebody somewhere down the line has to pay for it, whether with their lives or out of their own pocket or through their own efforts just for somebody else. Free is not free. People don't understand that, except in one instance. Well, in a way, our freedoms and liberties. People can be a free society.
But there's still a cost of it.
Individuals. You and I are free individuals because of other people paying the price.
Right.
Okay, we didn't put on the uniforms in order for us to maintain our personal freedoms and liberties. We didn't have to serve our country in order to have that. So in a sense, it was free to us, but not free for somebody else.
Right.
And this is what people have lost sight of.
And it's not, but to take it a step further, Jeremy, it's not even free in that respect because we still have the duty and obligation to proactively maintain and safeguard it. As an attorney, it's my duty, obligation, and responsibility to protect the rights of my clients and just Americans in general. That's why I swore that oath of office, and I take that oath very seriously.
To the best of your ability, which falls right back again at the onstart of our show with the discipline action. You have a discipline in law, which affords you and creates the ability for you to be able to enact that discipline. Again, Trump does not have any discipline in the Constitution, so therefore he does not have the ability to uphold, protect, and defend it.
You want to know something interesting about Trump?
It makes him illegitimate as a candidate.
Sure, but you want to know something interesting about Trump? You can do some digging on this, Jeremy. I have it from a good source that his degree is not even in business. It's in anthropology. That's all he has.
Nice play on words there. So he duped people into believing that he has a business degree.
Right.
But yet it's in anthropology.
Right.
Interesting.
So he steals dirt from other people.
Again, folks, you just can't make this stuff up. You really can't. It's, you know, the whole point is, like you said, we have to get back to the reality of things. Bernie Sanders wants to offer free stuff to people. You know what? There's a reason why he calls himself a Democrat socialist.
Yep.
He's a socialist. No matter what term he puts in front of it or after it, he is a socialist. Period.
And socialism is always anathema to the supreme law of the land.
Yes, that's like a murderer, a serial murderer, saying, "Oh, I'm a legal murderer. I can murder people legally." How?
Yeah,
because the
lynching.
legal definition of murder is the unlawful taking of human life. How can you legally do something that is unlawful? You can't. How can you be a democratic socialist and run for the president of the United States or be a democratic socialist? You can't, because you're a socialist. See, this is the other thing that Hillary has been smart about. She has not come out and given herself that label.
Right.
She exhibits every single aspect of socialism, every single aspect of it, except she hasn't considered herself to be one.
Right.
She hasn't named herself to be one. At least Adolf Hitler had the ball to, come out and say we are socialists. So it's just, at least he did that. But he could do that over in Germany because he worked up the crowd. He got them complacent. He got them eating out of his hands, which is kind of difficult because I've never seen anybody eat on the back of somebody's hand.
No. Well, unless it's peanut butter. I guess you could do it then.
Yeah, but he was able to do that, and it fit for that narrative because of the time and the place he was in.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at the current state of the United States of America, you'll find that we are in a similar situation. Everybody's worried about the economy. The leadership doesn't seem to be able to address any of the problems. People just don't know their history. And as a result, it has led us down this untenable and insufferable path that we find ourselves on now. And of course, the gutless opposition party really does bear a lot of the blame here. Because if you look back to the midterms of 2014, they had a golden opportunity to step up and put an end to what was happening with Barack Hussein Obamacare, all of this other frothing at the mouth Fabian socialistic agenda that was being crammed down our throats ad nauseum, and they dropped the ball. When you don't stand for anything as a political party and as a political movement,
you'll fall for everything.
You'll fall for everything, and you can't win. Because what did they run on in 2008? They ran on being opposed to Obama. What did they run on in 2012? What was the platform of the Republican Party? Opposition to Obama. Now here we are in 2016. What is our party platform? To be against Hillary Clinton.
Opposition to Hillary.
That's it.
Opposition to Hillary, extending the policies of Obama.
Mm-hmm. How does that work?
It's not, and it won't work.
Exactly.
It won't work because it can't. It is diametrically opposed to everything that the Constitution stands for. Period. And we have all these individuals that, we could do this. No, you can't. Stop taking the Constitution. See, this is the other thing where the Republicans have failed. Mm-hmm. They could have stopped Hillary. Everybody is so hell-bent on trying to keep Hillary out of the White House. Guess what? You had your chance long before this election cycle even began. The gutless GOP had their chance long before this election cycle began. Remember Benghazi. All Trey Gowdy would have had to do was petition the federal courts for a special prosecutor to bring about a grand jury indictment, because that's the only way it can be done.
Right.
You indict her, you throw the book at her, and you make an example out of her. But they didn't do that. They botched that chance. And then they had another chance. Before that, they had a chance of getting rid of Obama. Operation Fast and Furious.
Which is still ongoing.
They're likes to drop the ball on that one.
Yeah.
They're likes to drop the ball on that one. Same scenario applies. Same exact strategy and scenario applies.
Yeah. Why do you think we call them the gutless opposition party? We call them the gutless opposition party because of that very scenario. They are dropping the ball, and it's on purpose.
Mm-hmm. And then the third and final chance, third time's the charm, folks. We had Ted Cruz, the only constitutional candidate who has a provable record of doing what he says he's going to do because he has done it, run for president. And the gutless opposition party threw him not only under the bus, but they threw him off the front of the bus first, and then let the bus run him over.
And then backed it up.
Why? Because people bought into this crap of, let's make America great again.
Yeah, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? That's the whole thing with Trump. We don't ever get anything expounded upon. It's always just, well, Trump. Yeah, but Trump. You know, we have to bring that up all the time because that's their default position. That's what they always fall back to. That's what they believe. That's what they do. But it doesn't work. It cannot work. It is not founded in any form of logic, any form of reality, and it just leaves us in this untenable and unsupportable position. So how are we going to maintain this? How are we going to actually do anything to undo the damage that has been done here? You're not going to be able to do it. Not with this platform, not with Trump running around saying that, well, we need to have a $10 an hour minimum wage because I built a tower, I have perfect hair forever. Give me an ever-loving break.
And then they want to discombobulate people even further.
Of course.
By throwing in this non sequitur of, well, if Hillary's elected, there'll be 2, maybe 3, maybe even more Supreme Court nominees and picks put on the Supreme Court. Folks, the Supreme Court is illegitimate. They've become illegitimate because of their rulings. They have violated the United States Constitution. They do not hold their positions in good behavior, which is the only requisite in the Constitution for them to even hold their position. They have violated it. When they make rulings contrary to the Constitution, A, those rulings have no standing. B, that is not good behavior. Because they take an oath to uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution to the best of their ability. And you know what? A lot of people seem to think that Supreme Court justices have to have a law license or a law degree to be a judge.
No, they don't.
Nope. Sorry, I could be a Supreme Court justice, and I guarantee you I could do a hell of a better job than the ones that are on there now.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a close tie with me and Clarence Thomas, but the rest of them, they're illegitimate. They have no authority. And guess what, folks? They don't have any authority under the Constitution to enforce their rulings.
And that goes back to Andrew Jackson.
They do not have powers of contempt.
Look at what Andrew Jackson did with them. The Supreme Court has made their ruling. Now let them enforce it.
Yep.
But does anybody have the testicular fortitude to stand up to them now? Of course not.
And that's the problem, again, because of complacency, because we the people have allowed ourselves to become complacent.
Mm-hmm.
We have, Randy, you and I both have individuals in our lives that we've always held in high regard and high respect for their intelligence and their abilities and things that they've done in their lives. Even they don't even want to do anything. They don't even want to stand up anymore. We have to do this. If that's the case, if Trump gets in and he burns it down to the ground, I guess that's what we have to do. We don't need to burn the country down, folks. We don't.
It's asinine to think that we have to.
It goes back to restoration. It goes back to preservation and restoration. If you burn the country down, do you have any idea how long it is going to take to reestablish the form of government that we have now, that the founding fathers have intended us on having?
Generations.
Constitution?
Generations.
And by the time that happens, I'll guarantee you, I will tell you this, it will never happen. You know why? Because we have people with the capabilities like Russia, North Korea, China. A lot of people say that China won't be able to invade the United States. They're already here. They own every single port of entry that we have into this country on the western coast. They own every single shipping port in Mexico. What would stop them from taking 1 billion of their people, loading them all up in shipping containers, and having them flood into our country to take it over?
Nothing.
See, all they would have to do is take a play from the jihadi playbook and have them all as suicide bombers coming into the country and just blowing everything up. Then people in mass hysteria, and then they would just be able to come in. Hong Kong police will come in, kick in everybody's door, and just systematically execute people. Why? Because they do that in China now. And if they're willing to do it to their own people, they will definitely have no problem doing it to the American people. Why? Because China has never liked the United States. Ever. Couple that with they team up with Russia, North Korea, Iran, and any other country that has a problem with the United States, doesn't see eye to eye with us. You want to burn our country down, all you're doing is sealing our imminent death and fate.
Yep. Except that we will still fight. We will never give up. And we won't give up our firearms.
I will die on my feet. I will die on my feet before I serve on my knees to anybody. And that's the way it is.
And what we have to keep in mind here, folks, is that our founding fathers gave us the greatest birthright of any people on the face of God's green earth. And that birthright is the greatest social contract or compact ever devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above. That's our Constitution. That's what is so important. That's the only thing that unifies us as a nation and a people. It's the only thing that defines us both as a nation and a people. And that Trump finds no value in it, in my mind, that makes him just as much of a danger, if not more so, than Hillary Clinton. Because at least Hillary Clinton does understand the Constitution. She understands it for the purpose of trying to destroy it, because she is a dyed-in-the-wool Fabian socialist leftist. But Trump is too. If you look at his past, if you look at the statements and the positions that he held for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on Earth, it has been solidly in the camp of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on the utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people.
See, this is what the Never Trump movement is all about. It has nothing to do with Cruz suspending his campaign and not being in the running anymore. But of course, the Lying Branch Trumpidians want people to believe that. No, Never Trump equals never anti-Constitution. Period.
Yeah. It is Glenn Beck said, always Constitution.
There's no value in it. We will not turn our backs on the Constitution. We will not turn our backs on our fellow citizens and their rights that are enumerated in our shared Constitution. I will die on my feet before I serve on my knees to anybody, and I'll do so protecting everybody's rights if God willing and God deems it so. That's just the way it is. But you can't get that kind of a statement from a Lying Branch Trumpidian. Why? Because they support Trump, and by proxy, because they support him, he is their Jim Jones, automatically they see no value in the Constitution either. They have turned their backs on we the people. They have turned their backs on the principles and the fundamental tenets of this country. Yeah. They want to call me a traitor because I won't abandon my principles and vote and toe the line and vote for some waffler who's a fraud and everything that he's ever done. Folks, do you even know that he doesn't even own those buildings?
Yep.
Trump Towers,
Trump building in Chicago, all over.
Chicago. He doesn't own those buildings.
George Soros does.
He doesn't own them.
George Soros
has a stake in them, sure.
Yeah.
But Trump doesn't physically own the rights to those buildings.
No.
Other individuals own those buildings. He licensed his name to them to put his name on the building. Just because his name is on it doesn't mean he owns it.
Right.
But he has everybody believing my property's this, my property. No. Stop lying to people. Just stop.
He's not going to be able to stop. He's a pathological liar. It's all he's ever done. It's all he's ever known. That's what his father did. That's where he learned it. You know, Mr. Green and then John Barron and John Miller. We exposed that on March 26th of 2016. We were one of the first to actually go out and expose that during this election cycle. And only after that did people start to realize just what was going on. And even then, the Lion Branch Trumpidians don't care. They say that that's the cost of doing business. He's this greatly businessman. Yeah, but Trump. But here's the thing. Trump, if he can't even tell us who he is when he's trying to vie for the highest office in the land, and the reason that this is so important is because the chief executive office in these United States of America is more powerful than it was ever constitutionally endowed to be, then he cannot be trusted with the reins of political power in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Because if we hand over the reins of power to him, it's the kiss of death to our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. It has nothing to do with Cruz. The reason the Lion Branch Trumpidians want to keep condensing it down to Cruz is because they think that we follow the same cult of personality they do. It's projectionism, pure and simple, labeling.
Yeah, and again, never Trump equals never anti-Constitution. Period.
Right, always Constitution.
It's always Constitution. Never Trump equals always Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't see any value in it. And if he doesn't see any value in the Constitution, how can he see any value in anybody that would vote for him? This is what they're so blinded to.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to make America great. But you know what? America's already great. It has always been great since its inception, and it will always be great so long as the Constitution is
in place
and viable. And again, the first three words of the Constitution: we the people. We are the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to say the Constitution is a living document. No, it's not a living document. However, it does have a spirit, and that spirit is embedded and enshrined in we the people. We the people are the living aspect of the Constitution. Why? Right. Because we are the only entities that are capable of preserving, protecting, and defending it and applying it where it needs to be applied. The Constitution itself is an inanimate object. It cannot apply itself. It doesn't have the capabilities.
It can't defend itself either.
Personification on it. They want to put a personification on it to say that it can do that. That's like saying, you know what, my handgun or any of my firearms have killed people.
Oh, yeah, look at it this way, Jeremy. That's what they always do. They always apply that of an inanimate object, making an inanimate object to be blamed. Look at the way that they went after the Southern Cross battle flag after the Dylan Storm Roof jerkwad ran up and shot that Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church there in Charleston, South Carolina. they blamed it on a flag. They didn't go to the real heart of the matter. They didn't go and point out what was really the root cause of all of it. No. They wanted to go after an inanimate object. They wanted to go after the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the American people, just like they always do, because that is their modus operandi. That is all they know how to do. That is the only thing they care about.
And at the same time, with the adverse, that individual that worked for that media company, that journalist, that ended up shooting that reporter and that cameraman.
Vester Flanagan was his name.
Vester Flanagan.
Yeah.
He was a gay black man who went and killed two innocent people because he lost his job. But did you see the media do anything about the flag that he displayed? The rainbow flag?
Nope.
Nope, not a word. Not a word. Why? Because it
goes against their agenda.
Narrative.
Yeah, it goes against their agenda.
To their narrative and their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Again, folks, this is Fabianism 101. Utilize things and propaganda in order to create problems so that you can come in and say that I have the solution for the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Use your enemy propaganda against them.
Right. Because what they are doing is not boomerang proof. Everything that they're doing is not boomerang proof. They are the ones that are trying to foist their ideology on us against our will. And you know, one of the most critical aspects of the fundamental natural law tenets, going back to the field of Runnymede in 1215, when King John of Robin Hood fame was forced by the English baronage to sign Magna Carta, or the Great Charter, it was, you cannot have government without the consent of the governed. That is such a quintessential part of who we are. It is an intrinsic part of our nature that is nearly 1,000 years old, folks.
That's where the phrase government of the people, by the people, and for the people comes from.
Yes.
That's where it comes from. Now, people have lost sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
They have lost sight of that. I believe that was what, in the Gettysburg Address?
Yes, it was.
And I don't like quoting Lincoln. Lincoln was a tyrant. And Lincoln had an ulterior motive with saying that. And again, we here at the Wright Flyer Radio Aviation Excellence, we like to take certain clicks, words, and phrases and restore them to their original intent. Words like gay. Guess what? I'm not going to stop saying the word gay. Why? Because I know the true definition and meaning and original meaning of the word. If somebody finds it offensive, I don't care. Show me in the Constitution where you have the right to not be offended.
Article 9,
Let me give you a hint. Maybe you,
Clause 0.
Hold on. That's actually in Article 12 of the Constitution.
Oh, Trump's clause? Oh, the bovine clause.
Yes.
The bovine excrement clause. Yes.
Yes. So, if people are offended, I don't care. I really don't care. In fact, I say good. I'm glad you're offended. I have a simple philosophy. If I'm not pissing at least one person off a day, I'm not happy. Why? And people say, well, why would you want to do that? Because if I enrage somebody, if I make somebody angry, just one person, and then I point out why it is stupidity on their part to get angry about being offended, it gives them pause to think. And when they start to think, they start to think for themselves instead of listening to everybody else, and then the truth sets in, and the truth sets them free.
And, you know, we have to stand up for what is our right. Because, again, that's part of the living aspect. That's what is expected. Because with every fundamental and inalienable God-given right, there counts as a duty and obligation. And I know we've said this so many times that it's almost ad nauseum now. But it is so important that it bears repeating again right here, right now, as we have this conversation. Because we have lost sight of it, as you said. We have turned to some messianic figure to come down on a cloth-shaped cloud to somehow magically save us. But if you think about the reservations that our founding fathers had with respect to any type of centralized authority, any type of conglomeration of authority, they were intrinsically, inherently distrusting of it because of the centralized authority of the British Crown and Parliament, and how that was wielded against them to force them into a second-class citizenship type thing, which led to our revolution, that led to the American War of Independence. And therefore, if you turn to somebody who claims to have the power to save this country and to have that power all unto themselves, they have the power to destroy the country.
Yeah, that, and again, the founding fathers, the way they framed our Constitution, it wasn't entirely so much of showing people, what the ultimate sovereignty was. That was the large aspect of it. That was the vast majority of the purpose for it. But they also had a secondary purpose that comes with it. The checks and balances that come within the Constitution, the separation of powers. They knew, they didn't even trust themselves to delegate or have the Constitution delegate authorities to them because they knew that they were men.
Mm-hmm.
They were men placed on this earth, and they are imperfect. So therefore, they needed a way to keep themselves in check, to make sure that they themselves did not abuse their authority and their power. That's what the Constitution does for the government. Because
it's the natural inclination of men to try and amass power for themselves, irrespective of the impact that that's going to have on culture, community, and on a free system of government. And that shows the infinite wisdom and foresight of our founding fathers, that they understood that this is the way of men, that is the natural inclination of political entropy to set in and to try and chip away at the natural state of humanity. Because the natural state of humanity is always to strive to be free. That is the the self-evident truth that is at the heart of this experiment of a representative republic, which is the longest contiguous or uninterrupted running representative republic that is constitutionally endowed in the entire course of human events. That is amazing. If you stop and think about that for a moment, folks, in an objective fashion, you'll see that they really did hand down the greatest governmental document that had ever been created, ever been devised by mankind.
I'm going to take it a step further. This inclination, this natural inclination for men to usurp authority and have ultimate power and authority, I'm going to call that a natural sin.
It is.
Because where did sin come from? Sin came from the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve ate from the fruit of the forbidden fruit from the tree in the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because through temptation from Satan. Now, folks, if you remember your Sunday school history lessons, who was Satan? Satan was an angel named Lucifer, who decided one day, at some point in time, that he was more powerful than God, that he was going to unseat God in his heavenly throne. That's why he was cast out of heaven.
Yeah.
Lucifer was actually a beautiful creature.
Yeah, he was the son of light. Son of light.
He was the son of light. He was the most beautiful creature that God had ever created. And he decided that he was going to unseat God and take over his authority and take over heaven. That's why he was cast out.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Trump is, too.
That's why,
when you stop and think about it, that's what Trump is as well, because Trump sits there and says that he doesn't need forgiveness from anybody, that he doesn't feel that he's done anything wrong. Well, folks, that's the type of hubris that brings down men. Remember the old saying, the old adage of pride cometh before the fall? That's where we are, folks.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we find ourselves both as a nation and as a people right now. But that does not mean that this current state of affairs cannot be turned around. that we would be incapable or unable of putting this nation back onto the right path. That is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have vowed to be the new resistance. That is why we are the voice of liberty in these dark and troubled times. We will never turn our back on that. We will never be willing to give in or to sell our soul as so many have. People like Lush Bimbo, people like Sean Wannity, people like Laura Ingle Brown. We just can't. You know, Laura Ingle is a truly disgusting person because of what she did. But you know what, folks? We stand here now fighting for our liberties. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Folks, she is disciplined enough to not pour the alcohol on you. If she does, push her out of the plane. And as always, folks, I'm Randy Wright, your captain. I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to thank you for flying with the Wright Flyer. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here on our YouTube page or Facebook page. And on top of that, we invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. There you'll find our departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of Jeremy over there, and the Blogspot account that lists audio blogs as well as other useful information. And then there's the Cafe Press account.
Oh, the Cafe Press account. Such glorious, glorious things there. Folks, if you want to delve into the sin, a natural sin, and trust me, you know, people have said this is a sin, but, you know, supporting capitalism, great. We're all for it. But do it on your own terms. Okay, you want to share the wealth, so to speak, but do it so in a vibrant fashion by donning some of our apparel with our first-class passenger logo or our traditional Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer logo. We welcome it. It's perfectly fine, and if need be, well, you know, our flight attendant, I don't know if she'll be able to help you with that. If she refuses, yeah, like Randy said, push her on the plane.
As always, folks, it's great to have you aboard. Hope to see you next time. Do take care.